Okay, so you are all at the San Francisco Drupal Users Group. It is a monthly meetup where we come together and talk about Drupal or Drupal adjacent stuff. It's been sort of nice during the shelter in place and the pandemic that we've been able to open up and do things virtual. So we have more people being able to attend our meetups because that geographical barrier has been reduced. So that's a bright side for our meetup group. Expectations here, this is being recorded, like I said, so if you want to turn your camera off, usually what happens though is in the recording, it's only the speaker who shows until we open it up. But like I said, for this particular meetup, I'm going to hit record, and then for the interactive parts, we'll do it after we finish the presentation. There's live captions. You can turn those on with the CC button in the toolbar. I do usually ask that people stay muted during the presentation, unless all of a sudden I'm unmuted or my slides aren't changing or something like that. Feel free to alert me because I'm here on my own hosting and delivering the content. So I might not see the chat window in time or something. So if something's happening and something's going awry, please unmute and say something. And then if you are unmuted, be mindful of the background noises behind you. Like Nora said, she talks and then she mutes right away. And then if you are on camera, we don't mind virtual backgrounds, but we don't want any moving backgrounds because we do have some attendees that live with vision-induced motion sickness. So keep those backgrounds stationary. And then be nice, be respectful, and follow the Drupal Code of Conduct. You can do a search and find out. We at San Francisco Drupal Users Group use the Bad Camp Code of Conduct, which is based on the DrupalCon Code of Conduct. I don't have any Drupal news because I didn't think about it ahead of time, but we do have some Drupal events coming up. Mid-Camp is in person in Chicago in 12 days, so that's pretty exciting. DrupalCon Pittsburgh is in person June 5th through 8th. Drupal Camp Asheville is in person and will have a little bit of a remote aspect to it, and that's July 7th and 8th. Drupal Camp Colorado is August 5th and 6th, I believe, and I think they're going to do a hybrid. Decoupled Days is in Albuquerque this year instead of New York, and that'll be in August and designed for Drupal. We're unsure of those dates, but those are the camps that are coming up. Some of our camps and conferences have their call for sessions open. DrupalCon Lille, if you want to go to France, they're accepting papers right now. Drupal Camp Asheville is accepting sessions, and Drupal Camp Asheville's to tie this workshops for the Drupal Camp Asheville group, not specifically, but this year they have a neurodiversity program where, say you don't want to get up in front of people and give a session, they're accepting writing proposals, and because everyone everyone shares their information differently and everyone sort of learns differently. So Drupal Camp Asheville is accepting papers for both sessions and articles. And then accessibility talks, if you have an accessibility topic you would like to share with the world, Accessibility Talks is always looking for presenters. And then San Francisco Drupal Users Group is looking for presenters. We do Drupal, we do Drupal adjacent, and we do some tech. We could call it San Francisco Developers Users Group if we want, but we are more Drupal, but we're always looking for content too. There's some Drupal jobs. Let's see, Drupal Camp Asheville has a job board, but I maintain it, and I think there's only one job up there right now. But Florida Drupal Camp has a job board, and although Drupal Camp Florida is already passed, those jobs are still current. Canopy Studios has some openings, and Pantheon. But if you're looking for a job or you have a job, you can post that in chat and chat amongst yourselves. And then upcoming at San Francisco Drupal Users Group, I don't have anything because I have no idea, because I don't host anymore and have to do these slides together at the last minute. So I'm not sure what's happening next month in May, but it'll be on Meetup once they decide. And then today, we're doing a writer's workshop. So I will stop sharing this screen and bring up my slide deck for Catherine. You are not muted, and we can hear a little bit of noise, but it's nice to see you, Catherine. So I'm going to, let's see. Hold on a second. My slides are in the wrong part of my Red Hat permissions. So I need to log in with my Red Hat account. Okay. Okay, so you should see the Writers Workshop title slide. Is that what's showing for y'all? Yep, okay, great. And I'm gonna pop open the chat window so I can see if someone is chatting. Okay, so you are at a Writers Workshop. Like I said before, everyone digests information differently or wants to share information differently. This is based on a speaker workshop that we give in the Drupal community, and we converted it into a writer's workshop. Let's see. There's images in the deck, but all of them are decorations, so I won't be describing them. None of them add any value or more context. We'll probably take a break in about 45 minutes to an hour because it's a 2-hour workshop. And this is the first time I've done this workshop outside of Red Hat. So I just want to let you all know that there could be some mistakes or some Red Hat content that we forgot to switch to Drupal content, but all the content's kind of the same as far as technology goes. Marjorie was going to be here with me tonight, but she had a conflict. Marjorie is the community manager at Red Hat for the Enable Architect site. So if you're an architect, it's a great place to get your stuff published. And then I am AmyJune. I am the community manager over at opensource.com, and I have the privilege of helping people get published on opensource.com. So our topics are all open source. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Volkswagen Chick. A lot of these welcome notes are the same as the San Francisco Drupal Users Group slides. You know, it'll be slightly interactive where we'll ask for things in chat. I do ask that people stay muted. Feel free to get up and move around. We're adults, you know, come back, and we'll be taking at least one break near the bottom of the hour. So if y'all want to introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great. You know, maybe your name, where you work or what you do in Drupal, your location. And then I have some icebreakers up here, you know, maybe what's the first website you ever built, or what's the last TV show you watched? That's always a nice one because I never know what to watch next. Or maybe you can share your comfort food. I am outside the San Francisco Bay Area in Hollister. I live in the agricultural hub of Central California. And then the first website I ever built was when I worked at a consultancy way back when, and I helped build the Stanford Cantor Museum website. Really proud of that. I did the site building and not the theming. That was pretty interesting work. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Writing, you know, topic search. We're going to do some brainstorming. We're going to do brainstorming to help find a topic, and then we're going to do some brainstorming on refining a topic. We'll go over some generic style guide stuff, the basic building blocks of what it takes to create an article, and then some resources. Okay. So let's start with the foundation. So what are we looking for? You know, today, really the goal is to help you find your inner writer. Writing is just another form of communication, and we're here. Well, I'm here to help to help you tell your story. Storytelling doesn't have to stop at childhood. You know, our experiences have significantly changed since we were toddlers and you know, playing ball at the beach, although we all kind of can still play ball at the beach. But our talents, our skills, our victories, the lessons we learned are all worth sharing. You know, everyone has a different lived experience. So maybe you haven't written about them before. And, you know, besides like it being like part of your job, you know, I'm always curious, and if you want to drop it in chat, have you written before, or why you haven't written before? But the first part of the workshop, we're going to help like break down some of the myths about writing, and then kind of get you on that first path to publishing an article. So why am I here specifically? Well, I work for opensource.com and I love Drupal. And so I have the privilege of helping promote the Drupal project or open source on opensource.com. So that's why I'm here. And we're just looking for more people to, you know, share their voices. It doesn't have to be on opensource.com, but, you know, share their voices in the written form. So we're really looking for any topics that people are passionate about, you know, specifically looking, you know, there's no right and wrong topics when it comes to what you're passionate about, what your skill sets are. And then some of this is a little bit specific to Red Hat. We have different audiences. We have the Enable Architect site, we have opensource.com, we have Enable Sysadmin, and the Enterprisers project. If you want to talk to me about that later, you can. But like I said, this was kind of Red Hat specific. So everyone has their own reasons for writing, but people have reasons for not writing. And a lot of those are myths. And so I want to, you know, break down some of those myths that we might have about why we haven't written. The first one is I'm not an expert. And that's okay. You know, just like when I give speaker workshops, it's okay not to be an expert. And it's okay because everyone has a different idea about what an expert means. You know, no one knows everything and everyone has something to learn. You can know more about a topic than the readers do. You can find a topic where you have knowledge where the audience doesn't. You know, there are things that we do in tech or you do in tech that other people don't do, and that makes you an expert in their eyes. You know, even if your audience has knowledge about the same topic, not everyone frames that knowledge in the same way. You know, it's possible that you feel you only know a little bit about a topic, but it's still more than most of the readers that, you know, will come and visit your article. And you're probably more of an expert than you think. You know, most of us have heard about what imposter syndrome is. You know, it's that feeling where you're an imposter and you don't have the knowledge and you've been faking it this whole time and you're just kind of waiting for someone to find you out. But you're not alone. You know, a lot of us who first started out, you know, doing public speaking or writing articles have imposter syndrome. And then, you know, some of us come from marginalized communities where we don't see a lot of people that look like us, you know, writing articles or giving presentations. And with saying that, you know, our lived experiences, you're always an expert in your own experience. You know, case studies make great articles. You know, you can write about something you did, something you learned, how you overcame an obstacle, what was the solution to a specific problem you had, what's the process you went through to create or solve that problem. And these articles are great because they're unique. You know, it's just not the same information that everyone would find, you know, on an online tutorial. Even if you're writing an article that the audience knows about already, you have that different perspective and they're likely to learn something new. The second myth is people might, you know, ask questions or make comments at the end of the article or reach out to you on LinkedIn with questions you don't have the answer to, and you're afraid that you'll look like a fool. It's true. You know, people will ask you questions, but that's okay. Your reader understands that you might not know everything. And sometimes it's really hard to think when those comments first come in. So, kind of take a pause and look at the comment and maybe come back in a little bit after you think about it. You can ask in the comments if someone else has the answer. If you don't, you can tell them, if it's a LinkedIn conversation, that you don't know the answer and you'll look it up, or maybe you'll provide them resources late for them to do some research on their own. Sometimes people will make comments or ask questions that are off topic, and that's okay too. It's perfectly acceptable for you to say that. Say, this is out of the scope of the article. It's off topic and you'd be happy to discuss it somewhere else. And then, this took a long time for me, was remembering that it's okay to say that you don't know. People will think more highly of you if you admit that you don't know the answer than if you make something up. The next myth is, I have failed if my page views are low. If you reach 3 readers today, that is 3 more readers than yesterday. That's a 300% markup. You've just enriched and bettered someone's life. So I am sometimes reluctant to share page views with people because that's not a good measurement, and so it's something that can build over time. So again, if you've enriched someone's life, that's worth the article. Some people think that the how-to format is the only way they can share their information on a technical article. There's tons of ways that you can display and share content, and we'll cover some of those formats in the upcoming slides. Another common myth is that you have to submit an original article. Well, I know for opensource.com and Mattermost and some of these other, open source publications, we'll republish an existing article that's been published on like a personal blog or even on a corporate website. Just ask, usually the republication isn't 100% translated, but copy editors will tweak it to add voice and the tone to fit the specific personas of the readers. So if you have an article that you wrote on LinkedIn, or if you have an article on Medium, don't be afraid to ask a larger publication to republish it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons why some people don't write, especially for technical publications. So why haven't you written? Feel free. I saw some people posting some stuff already. What are some of the things that you're worried about? Maybe you've written for your own blog, your personal blog, but why haven't you written for a larger publication? Maybe you've only had one thing published. Why haven't you written again? Feel free to talk about it a little bit in chat. And then we have, why we do want to write. It helps build your credibility, when you have articles, you can be seen as an authority in your field, and really build up that credibility. Sharing your knowledge with others, like I said, public speaking is is a good way to share information, but it's also like the #1 fear, even above death and spiders, is public speaking. So sharing your knowledge through an article is perfectly okay. It helps build your confidence. The more you write, the better you get. It's a great way to give back to the community. Everyone's lived experiences are different, so adding your perspective is important. And then you meet people, you write an article and people who are interested in that subject will make comments or reach out to you. It helps sort of your network and be a part of the community. Travel is on here, but I think that's left over from the speaker workshop. But I think, traveling too, going to conferences, and sharing your information in an article and stuff like that and meeting people. So when you're out there, you have those LinkedIn connections when you go different places, you kind of already have a built-in network. Writing teaches you more, you do a little bit of research and you want to do the best you can. And so just like teaching, when you teach something, you learn more about what you're teaching. Writing can be fun. It's rewarding. You get that feeling of accomplishment that you've shared your information. Again, it can be career building. And then if you are part of historically excluded or marginalized community, you can be a role model. You know, like I said before, when people see themselves represented on, you know, on a larger publication, it gives people confidence and it helps them feel like they belong. You know, they feel less marginalized and less represented when they see someone who looks like them writing. Okay, so moving into finding a topic. I'll talk a little bit about article formats. So, so it gives you kind of an idea of what a headline can be. We'll do a brainstorm, and then we'll kind of do another exercise on choosing a topic. So what are the article formats? And these aren't all of them, of course. You can have introductions or, you know, getting started guides. You can do tutorials, and those are a little bit different. Those are more like step-by-step or how-tos. You can do lists. Some people, their first writing assignment might be like a news roundup where they list a few articles and then give like a paragraph introduction on all these articles. Or it could be a list of resources that you found valuable, or a list of Drupal modules you install on every site. You know, you have your personal stories and your case studies. Okay, so this is the part where we brainstorm, and I'm going to show you my brainstorming. This is what I do every workshop, is I have this like running thing of all the ideas I have. So if you want to grab, you know, a notebook or a piece of paper, you know, and a pen, or use whatever application you do for note-taking on your computer. This is the perfect time to do that, because we're going to do some brainstorming. We're going to answer the question, you know, I don't know what to write about. You know, we're going to come up with as many topics as we can. You know, we're not looking for perfect, you know, don't do perfect. We don't even need good ideas at this point of the conversation and the brainstorm. Just the idea is just to get all of these ideas out on a piece of paper, you know, good, bad, or ugly. You know, I've had some people come up with 4, I've had other people come up with 40. It's really up to you how many prompts that like kind of spark your interest. You can draw, you can do mind maps, you can, anything that summons inspiration, you know, and I'll be prompting you with questions to generate more topics. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do some prompts, and I'll give some time between each prompt, but you know, this is the exercise where we kind of do that big brain dump. Oh, it's nice that everyone's sharing their socials in the chat. That's nice of everyone. So what got you into open source or Drupal, and what keeps you in it? And I'm going to get a glass of water as what do you love about Drupal or your specific topic? What would you like to learn about next? When was the first time you contributed to open source? You know, a code, a presentation in a forum? What was that experience like? What has been the biggest challenge for you in Drupal or tech or open source in the last year or two? What is the last thing that you've learned? What is the biggest challenge that you've had with open source, and how did you overcome it? This is a great way to share solutions. What are you most passionate about when it comes to tech or Drupal or open source? What most excites you? What sorts of things do you love sharing with others about Drupal or tech or open source? What questions about Drupal or open source or your technical project do you get asked about most by your family, your friends, the people you work with, beyond what is Drupal? And these are just some random prompts that might get you thinking a little bit more about, different scopes of articles. If you're a mentor, how does mentoring enable you, either as a mentor or a mentee? What is the specific thing that you're an expert in? What is, automation or project management or digital inclusion? What is it and what solutions does it bring? How have your past experiences shaped who you are in your new role? I recently gave a talk about this very thing because I came into tech later in life, and I shared like how being a Volkswagen mechanic, how being a Sunday school teacher, how being a mother helped shape my role in Drupal. How did you learn a particular programming language? And better yet, why did you learn it? How does focusing on solutions help you with your career or on your team? How is UX different from design? And you can parallel that with whatever you work in. How do you pitch your project, your open source solution or Drupal to a technical team that's never heard of it? Or to a family member that might be wanting, a blog or something like that? This one's a little bit redundant, but I'll say it and skip to the next one. What solutions does your open source project provide, or Drupal or WordPress? Do you have any tips for career shifts or moving roles in tech? You may have started as, someone who did accessibility audits, but now you're a project manager, or you might have started as a developer and now, you're a CEO. So do you have any tips for career shifts? And that can be, not only like within the technology itself, but, how did you move from being a mechanic into your tech role? And this one's a little bit related. What was your, think back to what your first role was in Drupal or technology, and how has it shifted? What does working cross-functionally mean to you? Do you have a list of what you want to learn? That's always nice to share with other people. What's your favorite project or tool? What's your favorite module or extension or plugin? Do you have a favorite, Git interface? Do you have a favorite, brand of Linux that you like? What's something cool that you've created? You can write an article showcasing a project that you built. Yes, Rose, I'll share the recording afterward and the slide deck. Do you have a list of favorite resources? What are some cool tricks that you use all the time? And then feel free to share a prompt that you might have asked that might spark an idea in someone. You can share that in the chat. Okay, so we might have, some lists in front of us. We've got those, probably some good, some bad, and some ugly ones, but we're going to do an exercise now where we pick 2 topics from your list that best fits some more prompts that I'm going to give. You might find that you come up with new answers that weren't in your list as well. Go ahead and write those down. Or some of these, maybe you don't have anything in your list, so you feel free to skip that. Introductions to and getting started guides for new technologies, sometimes as big as, Kubernetes, or something as small as your favorite, Drupal API or your favorite library. Can you look at your list and pick 2 topics that at some point you didn't know a lot about, but now you have expertise in them? Can you write an article that's, a how-to guide where you list the steps that you would take to learn this new technology stack? This could be, that introduction or getting started article. Tutorials that list assumptions and guide readers with pictures and source code. Do you have 2 topics on your list where you could be confident about and lead a how-to article? And this goes if you're in Drupal, and if you're a module maintainer or looking for a good way to give back to the community in Drupal, in the code base, this could help in the README files. These are written in plain text, but sometimes developers don't have time to go back and really document how their module works or how it's installed. So READMEs are a good way to give back and kind of a good start on getting into technical writing. Lists, your favorite tips and tricks and resources, for any tech related topic. Do you have 2 things on your list that are on your list of brainstorming ideas that you could maybe write a list article? We have personal stories. These are our career journeys. This is, your Linux desktop setup story, or, your how you overcame something. Do you have 2 topics where you can share your personal experiences? And case studies, they're a little bit like personal stories, the personal stories about yourself. A case study is where you highlight solutions or an in-depth study of, something specific, like an organization or one person or group. There's some really good examples of case studies on Drupal.org if you want to look on Drupal.org for some ideas. Are there 2 topics on your list that you could formulate into a case study. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of look at your list and maybe draw some circles and some arrows and cross some stuff out. Now we're going to work on picking a topic. Okay, so go ahead and pick the topic that you're most passionate about and the one you think you want to develop further. And this is just an exercise to get you started. You know, you can pick another topic tomorrow or on the weekend and, you know, flesh it out yourself. But this is just sort of practice on picking a topic. We talked about this in case someone tuned in a little bit late. We're saving the interactive like verbal part till after the presentation because we're going to record it. But if you want to share in chat what topic you've picked and wherever you're at, it's fine. You know, just pick one and tell us about it in chat. And like I said, at the end, if we have time or people want to stick around, we can share some of those topics out loud with the group. So now you have your topic, you know, the kind of the one that you might be most excited about, or maybe it's the one where you want to learn something more about something. We're going to take some time and refine the topic now. And I think after this section, we'll take a little bit of a break, but let's refine our topics. So we're going to talk about the 5 W's that we learned in elementary school and that weird H that came along with it, you know. Who is this article for, you know, or who is the project for, you know, what does this specific technology do? Why was it created? You know, how does it work? When would you use it and where would you use it? So think about that. Who, what, why, how, when, and where of your topic. And we'll kind of take a little bit of a breather, you know, as we refine this. Actually, I think this is the perfect time to take a break. We'll take a 5-minute break. If people need to do what they do and move around, or if you want to, like, you know, work on refining the topic while we're at the break. So it is 20 after the hour where I live. So we'll come back about at 25 after the hour, or if you're in India, I guess 55. I get it wrong because of the half hour, but we'll come back in about 5 minutes. So sometimes refining our topics help us decide if we like the topic too. Do you have enough to write about? Now I'm going to go over some generic style guide tips. And these are just guidelines for different publications, depending on the publication you publish with, or, maybe it's your own personal site and you don't have a style guide. Just wanted to share a little bit about formatting, and not every style guide is the same. But a lot of them have real close similarities. So we'll talk about formatting and style, a little bit about links. One of the #1 questions that I get when people want to submit an article is, how long do you want it? So we'll talk a little bit about word count, and then I want to discuss images as well. Okay, so formatting and style. If you have a really long article, imagine I'm holding up my phone, imagine you're on the train or the city bus and you're reading an article. And if it's really long, more than 500 words, consider breaking up the article a bit using subheadings. And this is also good for navigating a website for people or for accessibility. Those are those H1s and H2s and H3s, if your article is longer than 1,300 words, that might be like an 8 or 9 minute read. Consider breaking it down into 2 articles or a little bit of a series. And I'll talk more about word count in a little bit. For interviews, make sure you delineate, questions from the who you're interviewing. You maybe, use bold for the questions and regular formatting for the answers. Sometimes interviews are a great way to get started on your first article. Say you want to talk about Drupal and you interview Dries, you just have to come up with the questions you want to answer for, and then he'll give you the answers for the meat of the article. For inline formatting, be really careful about inline formatting with, italics and bolding and things like that, because not all screen readers can, delineate when you're trying to bold or italic something. So use that sparingly. If you're writing about code, please delineate it using like the code tag, or let people know that it's code, because an editorial team will want to confirm the proper formatting, of that specific code before they publish it. If it's a short piece of code, the name of a function or maybe a small snippet, feel free to leave it in line within the paragraph. But if you have large pieces of code or terminal output, it should be put in a code block. And talking about code blocks, sometimes you'll see an image of a code block, in an article. I don't encourage that because people won't be able to copy and paste what's in an image. So it's easier for readers to copy and paste it if it's in that code block. Be careful when you're writing your article about using phrases like, in the code below or in the code above, because your layout is never guaranteed when it goes to an editorial team. So just make sure that you use a consistent pattern, that way when people are doing your copy editing, they can see, the pattern and follow that. You might want to explain more about the code afterwards, but if there's code sample after that, you should introduce it, by following a pattern. This helps readers stay clear about what the code sample does and avoids confusion about what the code is being referred to. So always, introduce it, if you introduce it one way, introduce each code block kind of the same way. Some of us like tables to display information. Be mindful of tables and resize when people resize them, because HTML tables don't always resize to fit screens, and it's sometimes difficult to read on mobile devices. So consider, instead of using a table, can you use bullet points instead? Links, when linking to an outside source within your article, most editors are going to choose the option to open it in a new tab. That way people stay on the website. But make sure that when you give folks links, the editors might not know what the context is. So maybe make a note about why you're linking to a specific page. And then links are at the approval of the editorial teams for wherever you publish, unless you're self-publishing. If the primary purpose of your article is to backlink to your company or product, maybe technical writing isn't the solution for you. Lots of publications want to focus on the stories, the open source projects, the technologies, the communities, not the product. A product pitch is okay, but weave a story around it. A great story about how you're using or giving back to open source at your organization, so be mindful of product pitches. A lot of readers will abort or leave an article when they find it to be more of a product pitch than highlighting what features are out and that kind of thing. Include links to open source projects that you mentioned in the article. Maybe it's a Wikipedia page describing the project at the first mention, or maybe when you first mention the project, link back to the project page on Drupal.org. Explain the link to other open source organizations or licensings. And then you can include links to technical ideas and terms that may not be known by a non-technical audience. So you might be a developer for a few years, but a junior developer is reading your article. So feel free to write an advanced article, but be mindful that someone might need a resource for a beginning. So if you have an article that you've written before, introducing the topic, or that there's another article out there, that's a good link for an advanced article to link back to, a more primary article. Most editorial teams give a really thorough review and copy edit. They'll help with formatting and style and grammar and spelling. But if you work on that stuff before you submit it, it helps the people on the editorial team. It expedites the process when an author makes the effort to have someone proofread, or if you run it through Grammarly first, or you have a friend or a coworker or a maintainer, look over and look at the proper grammar and spelling, to article drafts before you submit it. With saying that, I know some of these larger publications like Mattermost or opensource.com, we encourage people who may not have English as their first language to write to, and a lot of the larger publications will help people with their with translating it to English. So if English isn't your first language, don't be fearful about submitting an article. Editorial teams want to publish you, and we'll help you with that grammar and spelling if you need it. Word count, I talked about this being the #1 question I get. Lots of publications don't worry too much about word count, and neither should you. If having a word count helps you structure your writing, I have some guidelines. 500 to 600 words. This might be all that you need for like a project update, or a feature release, to announce a conference or some other timely open source news. Maybe it's an article about, going to your first tech conferences and what the highlights of it. 600 to 800 words. For reference, 600 to 800 words in a print magazine is, well, an article is usually about 750 words in a print magazine, which kind of translates to 1 page without images, or 2 pages if it includes several images or screenshots. And this is a good range for like a regular column submission, or a roundup, a listicle, or an interview, or a feature article, consider adding subheadings, a couple subheadings to break up the text and walk readers through the different sections of the article. 800 to 1300, this is, your longer article, this might be, a 7-minute read. These are your tutorials. They're thorough roundups. They're more in depth than that feature article. These are your getting started guides, your tutorials, your news releases. And then if you have any more than 1300 words, consider, like I said before, breaking the story up into multiple parts, having a series, sometimes when people are doing that internet search, there's a feature out there where it'll say, the title of your article and then like maybe how long the read is. And if it says like 7 or 13 minutes, some people, that scares them. So think about that. People, have short digestible chunks. So consider breaking up your article if it's any longer than 1300 words. And then images. So inline images and screenshots really add visual interest. Maybe it's to help illustrate your article and break up the text. If you include images for a publication that's not your own, make sure that you have permission to share them, or if they're your own, consider, using a license, like Creative Commons. Or, it's just good to let the editorial team know that you have the appropriate permission to share them on their sites. So attribution, make sure that you include image credits and license details, along with your draft. Some publications want you to submit your images as files, not in the article, but like maybe, the article separately and then images can be placed outside of the draft. So make sure that you label images so the editorial teams know where the images go in the article, break up your article and put, insert X, Y, and Z image here. Think about captions and alternative text, be sure to reference, think about people who don't access the information visually. Maybe they're using a screen reader. So make sure that you provide appropriate alternative text to the context in which you're using it for the article. So you can have an image like of a barn, for an example, but in one article, it could be a brown barn. In the next article, it could be a barn by the countryside with cows, or maybe the barn is getting, whatever. So think of the context, because most of the time the editorial team won't know the exact context of your image. And then the size of your image. Images should be big enough to accommodate screen sizes, but most publications will work with you to get the correct dimensions, and things like Drupal will optimize the images for you. But think about image size as it's either expanded, it might get pixelated, or when it's on a mobile phone. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the actual writing of the article and help creating an outline for your piece. Much like the speaker workshop, we'll talk about titles, the outline, which is like the introduction, the body, and the key elements. And then an important part of an article too is wrapping it up and having some calls to actions. So titles, depending on the publication, you might not even need to come up with a title because they might change it for you because they have good SEO or a formula for headlines. But, say it's, it always helps to have a catchy title. think of something, you know, catchy. It might be playful, but yet explanatory. You know, you don't want to just have like a catchy title and have no reference point for it. You know, so be careful of if your title is too clever. You want to create a title that stands alone without a blurb. Like I said, don't worry too much about headlines because editorial teams will optimize the headlines for SEO. You know, and think of SEO, it's search engine optimization. Use keywords in your title that people will search for. So if you're writing an article about contributing back to Drupal, what are the questions that people are going to be typing in search, you know, like how to do a merge request, you know, so if that's what your title or that's what your article focuses on, think about what people might search for to find your specific knowledge. So creating an outline. In your introduction, you want to be really clear about what your topic is. What are you going to cover? Why does it matter? You kind of want to hook people at that point. But you also want to be mindful of your reader's time. So in that introduction paragraph or a couple paragraphs, talk about who it's aimed at, you know, be clear about what your article is about, because reading is an investment and time is a privilege that some people don't have. So make sure you're real clear about in that introduction about what your article is, and be as succinct as you can, because you'll be writing about those topics later in the article. You know, so in your body, you want to include your main headings and your stories. You know, break it up. You know, we like to think of like the story of three. You know, if you have 3 points, you know, what is the main point that you're getting across? You know, what are some supporting points that illustrate that main idea, and what's a logical flow of those ideas? So we call it kind of the story of three. If you have a main topic and 3 supporting topics, if you have many more than 3 supporting points, that's when you think about whether or not you want to have a second article. So again, when creating that outline, you know, really think about those headings, you know, those subheadings that you'll have, you know, what are those 3 points of interest? What are the 3 well, for a listicle or something like that, you might have, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, or a list of resources. But you know, illustrate those points with subheadings when you're creating your outline. And in the body, you know, refer to those 5 W's and the H's again. You know, if you have a favorite project, and I'm going to use Drupal as an example, ask yourself, you know, who is the project for? You know, who's the reader? What solution does the project provide? You know, why was the project created? You know, how does it work? When would you use it and where would you use it? Again, you know, that who, what, why, how, when, and where really helps you in your outline create that body. And remember, an outline, you know, you can move stuff around. And so the flow might not be who, what, why, how, when, and where, but when you answer those questions, when you're creating the outline, it helps you kind of organize your thoughts. And then, of course, we have our conclusions and calls to actions. You want to summarize what you've talked about in the article. You want to think about what those main points are, you know, especially if it's a lengthy article, kind of come back around and talk about those main takeaway points. Most importantly, in that conclusion, you want to answer that so what question. Why did you write about this topic? Why is it important? And then after you answer that question, you know, this is a good time to link back to some resources that you think people will find useful. You know, a good place to go next. And then you know, your biography isn't included in the article, but this is a good place for you to provide a call to action and give your readers or your audience your contact information. So think about your bio as a little section of your article, and maybe your bio changes from publication to publication. So if you're writing for something like, you know, opensource.com, your bio, you know, gives some credibility to your open source credibility. But if you're writing for something, you know, like CSS tips and tricks, maybe your bio talks a little bit about your skill set, you know, in CSS or front end development. But having that bio with contact information is a call to action to invite people to like be a part of a discussion. You know, if you're worried about, you know, privacy and things like that, you know, LinkedIn is a really good place to have in your bio. Keeps it a little bit more professional. So bios, you know, think about, you know, having your full name, like how you would want it to appear in your article. If it's an article that you're not, maybe you can't share because of work or something like that, you know, are you ghostwriting? Is it a pseudonym? But provide like a full name. Maybe in a short bio, you include the name of your employer. You know, lots of publications encourage that, but it's not required. Think about providing a fun fact outside of tech, you know, like, at the end of my bio, I think I say like I'm into geocaching and mushroom hunting and things like Volkswagens. It gives people a little bit more of a glimpse into your life. Again, totally optional. Maybe provide your location. That way people can network with you, you know, include those social media links, or maybe, you know, you have a professional email address that people can contact you with. And of course, optional are things like your LinkedIn profile, your website, or any other business related site. You know, maybe you provide your Mastodon handle or Twitter handle. So think about, you know, how much information you want to share in your bio. But, you know, going back to, I talked about product pitches a little bit, you know, maybe it's not appropriate to have a lot of links to market back to your product, but maybe you can include that link to your company or consultancy in your bio instead, you know, take it out of the article and put it in your bio. And I have some examples of some bios. This one's opensource.com. So Hike, you know, she shared, you know, an image of herself, where she's located. She talks a little bit about her past. She gives some links to her website, her personal website and her personal blog, and then a little bit, you know, something fun. She likes to hang out at folk and bluegrass sessions playing the fiddle. And then, you know, on underneath her photo, we have the capability, we have fields where people can enter whatever social media they want. And she did Twitter and LinkedIn. And this is from another site, Paula, you know, she, you know, wrote about all the different things that she does. And, you know, the two bios are real different, but they're still, you know, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. You know, if you need to add more credibility, you can add more credibility. And then kind of going back to that call to action or that concluding paragraph, I'm going to kind of go over what we talked about today. You know, we went over those foundation and myths about, you know, breaking down why we haven't written, and maybe talking a little bit about why we want to write. We did the brainstorm, you know, where we found a topic and we filled up our notebooks. We did a little bit of style guide. And then we talked about creating the outline. And then I have resources at the end of the deck. And these look like mostly Red Hat resources, so you don't have to pay attention to those. It went a lot quicker than I thought it was, I guess, because I'm by myself and not switching back with Marjorie. Marjorie does a lot of storytelling. So I'm going to actually stop the recording. And that way, maybe if people want to share, I have to find the recording button.